What if I told you Squid Game wasn't just a show, but a chilling reflection of a real-life horror? A story of a South Korean concentration camp where real-life orphans were forced into labor. Just like Squid Game, the poor were exploited for the entertainment of the rich. And if they made even the slightest mistake, they were brutally punished. Squid Game wasn't just a show, it was a cultural phenomenon. Season 1 shattered every record imaginable, becoming the most watched fictional game show in streaming history. Imagine The Hunger Games meets Parasite, a brutal dystopian thriller that gripped millions worldwide. But when Season 2 dropped, the buzz was almost silent. So what happened? The mastermind behind it all, Hwang Dong-hyuk, didn't just stumble into success. He once lived in a tiny apartment with his single mother, struggling to make ends meet. During the day, he'd write small screenplays, and at night, he'd dream of something bigger. After years of poverty and odd jobs, his hard work finally paid off in 2014 with the release of Miss Granny, a national hit. But Hwang knew this wasn't the end of his story. In fact, the idea for Squid Game was born much earlier, all the way back in 2009. But producers kept rejecting his script. They thought it was too dark and too violent for South Korean television at the time. Frustrated and defeated, Hwang stored the script away in a box for years, until Netflix entered the picture. But here's where things get disturbing. Many believe Squid Game was inspired by a real-life horror story. Let's go back to 1978. South Korea was preparing to host the 1981 Olympics. But the government had a problem. The streets were filled with homeless children, addicts, and orphans. Authorities feared bad press and potential sanctions for human rights violations. Their solution? The Brothers Home Facility. On paper, it was presented as a safe space for the poor, but the reality was far darker. Police started kidnapping street children and beggars, shoving them into white vans, just like the disturbing scenes in Squid Game. These kids were taken to a facility where even 5-year-olds were forced into labor. If they made mistakes, they faced brutal punishments, both physical and psychological. The man behind it all was Mr. Park, the camp's manager. His plan was simple: clear the streets while profiting from forced labor. Each child had their head shaved and was assigned a number. Sound familiar? Just like the numbered jumpsuits in Squid Game. The worst part? This wasn't some underground crime. It was all sanctioned by the South Korean government. It wasn't until an investigative journalist exposed the facility that it was finally shut down. But Mr. Park? He was never arrested. And the victims? Many never fully recovered from their trauma. But Squid Game wasn't just controversial for its dark themes and possible inspirations. After the show's release, some disturbing real-world incidents followed. Remember the phone number shown on screen in the series? Turns out it belonged to a real South Korean student. Strangers started calling, harassing him, thinking he was somehow connected to the show. The stress pushed him so far that he even considered suing the creators. And then, there were the rumors of a tragic incident on set. Reports surfaced claiming that a cast member died during filming due to the extreme workload. Though Netflix denied the claims, it left many questioning the ethics behind such intense productions. Despite the controversies, Squid Game wasn't just a hit, it was a global phenomenon. Within just 28 days, the show had topped charts in over 20 countries, reaching 111 million viewers worldwide. Those green tracksuits? The creepy doll from Red Light, Green Light? They weren't just part of the show anymore. They became symbols. Even YouTuber Mr. Beast jumped on the trend, recreating a real-life version of Squid Game, without the violence, of course, racking up millions of views and proving just how deeply the show had impacted pop culture. But here's the question we're left with. Was Squid Game just a fictional masterpiece? Or was it a dark mirror reflecting society's deepest flaws? The exploitation of the vulnerable? The brutal consequences of desperation? The twisted entertainment of the wealthy? These themes weren't just part of the story, they were a reflection of reality. So, what do you think? Was Squid Game pushing boundaries for storytelling? Or crossing the line into sensationalism?